everybody. This is David Specht at Keep This in Mind, brought to you by SpechtHealth.com. And we have an amazing, amazing show for you today. I am bringing on two gentlemen. I think I can use the term gentlemen. I've met them both.
Sure.
And who are the host of the Fit Mess podcast. Now, I love the name because as a mess myself, I can resonate with the idea of trying to go from one state in life to another state in life. And that there's, we talk about the messy middle, but let's face it, life is just messy, period. And these guys is Jeremy Grater and Zach Tucker. They came together as a result of their own health journeys and really and truly turned it into a platform in which they are trying to help other people navigate the messy parts of life and get to be the best versions of themselves. They've had amazing guests on their show. And guys, I just want to kind of turn it over to you and Zach and Jeremy. I'll start with you, Jeremy. Jeremy, your story sounds like so many others where your health challenges started due to an injury, and then you had to navigate out of that injury into a place where you're kind of contending for your own health each and every day.
Yeah, thank you for having us. My injury was probably one of the dumbest injuries you've ever heard of in your life. I literally one morning was getting out of bed to quiet my dog from barking because it was going to wake up what was then my newborn daughter. And literally getting out of bed, I stepped weird and went down. My knee just buckled. I couldn't put any weight on it, just hurt unbelievably badly. And ultimately ended up in physical therapy offices and doctors and MRI scans and all the different things. And it was a physical therapist who, getting to know me, my family's history with knee problems, she was just like, if you don't get on a bike and just start moving your knees in that way, you're going to end up replacing both of your knees. And I thought, well, that's completely nuts. There's no way I'm getting on a bike. I'm 30 something years old. I haven't done that since I was a kid. That's ridiculous. What is this quack thing she's talking about? And so I went and did what I did at the time and complained to my brother about it. And I was like, this is the worst advice ever. And my brother, the way he said it and the time he said it, for whatever reason, it stuck. He just said, "Hey, dummy, you just need to decide that you're the weird guy that rides his bike to work every day." And I don't know why, but I was like, oh my God, I'm the weird guy for lots of reasons. Why not that one? I could do that. So within, I think it was like a week later, I bought a bike on Craigslist and started biking 9 miles to work every day. And man, I had no idea how much that would change my life in so many ways. Because not only am I getting in better shape now because I'm moving my body more, which is making me want to eat better, but the attention to now, the necessity of being present in the moment on a bike in city streets was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Because if you are thinking about what's going to happen when I get to work, or the regrets you had about last night, or when you were 12 or whatever, something bad's going to happen. You're going to miss that door that opens. You're going to miss that car that comes around the corner. Something bad is going to happen. And I just fell in love with like, oh, all of that chatter in my brain is gone. I just have to focus on right now. And that led me to a therapist's office where I learned more about meditation and Dharma and just being really present in the moment in more ways of my life, because that's what was missing for me. I was constantly regretting the past, worrying about the future, and never aware of what was going on right in front of me. And that was what opened the door to me to not only just being more present in my own life, but just how many other ways there were available to improve my life through physical activity, through eating better, through better sleep, and then all the different tracking mechanisms and all these things. Along the way, I met Zach, who was a few steps ahead of me on his journey, and it was his crazy idea to start this podcast. So I blame him entirely.
And that kind of really takes us into Zach's story. Zach, you were, it's hard to believe looking at you now, but pushing 300 pounds and you were at a job and I heard the story, a 5K, if you run a 5K, you get a day off of work. And that was really the catalyst, the thing that you could say yes to that kind of started you on your journey. Kind of take us through that whole thought process of, oh, I can run a 5K.
Well, the thought process was definitely not that I could run a 5K. It was, I get a day off from work, so I need to learn how to run a 5K. I was in the 290s at that point, and with my weight, I was almost 300 pounds. I had just quit smoking cigarettes. I was smoking 2 packs a day, drinking Mountain Dew every day, eating at McDonald's every day, just like the epitome of unhealthy. Like physically, I was just not good. One of my best friends was a manager at McDonald's, so I got free food. So I mean that part was amazing. But yeah, no, I'll never forget the day. Like whenever since I was a kid, like whatever I dive into at 110%. And thankfully, they were like, you get this day off if you run a 5K and you get to go home early. And that drove me to be like, oh, I want to be a social butterfly and I want to be part of this group and I want to know these people and I want to go home early. And I went to the local Y that had an indoor track, and it was a really short track. So you're constantly turning the whole time, but it was nine laps per mile. And like, I ran around that lap or ran around it once and like was on my knees, like heaving, feeling like I was going to throw up. So like my physical health at that time was just that bad. I couldn't even run a ninth of a mile without like almost wanting to vomit. And then the next day I went back and I did 2. And the next day I went back and did 3. And sure enough, I ran the 5K. And I don't know what my time was, but it was like, there were probably people who were walking that finished before I did, but I ran it. It was like a very slow jog. And then it was like 6 months later, I got a Christmas gift from my sister-in-law that was one of those runner's belts with a spot for like 2 things of water and some goos and things like that. And I'll never forget opening that and going, what is this? Why would she get me this? Like, you get this for runners. I'm not oh wait, I just ran a half marathon. So like in those 6 months, I was like running and built up and was running a half marathon in decent time. And I've never been able to beat like 8-minute miles, but like I can do a full marathon at 8-minute mile. So that was a moment where I was like, oh, I can be an athlete. Like I can do these things. And then I also found that all of the weight that fell off, the better sleep I was getting, the exercise that was, like feeding the foundation of your brain chemicals that you need. All of a sudden my anxiety went down a little bit and my depression went down a little bit. And I just felt mentally better. And I was like, oh, well, what else can I do? Like what other things can I do to make, and that's kind of when I started, listening to, anyone I could listen to on like biohacking and making all of these little changes to today where like, I'm probably the fittest and happiest and healthiest I've been in my entire life. But it took, 1,000 little changes and a pretty big mindset shift to get here. So, and now we talk every week about the things we've learned, the things we've done.
That is so cool, because I see this as something that develops, especially in the transformation business, whether it's life transformation, physical transformation, business transformation. You begin to see the world through a different set of eyes, a set that you want to impact or empower or help. Kind of tell us a story, and either one of you can take the lead on this. How did you go from your individual journeys to crossing paths to creating a podcast where you've literally done hundreds of episodes with interviews from some of the biggest names in the businesses? So kind of take us down that story.
Well, like I said, I blame Zach. I worked in commercial radio for 20 years and I started podcasting in 2004. And that podcast, I did one for about 13 years with my brother. And it was, I always equated it to the TV show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. My brother and my friend and I would all just get completely hammered and talk about whatever ridiculous nonsense was happening in our life because we thought it was hilarious. And so did our listeners. But as my life started to change, as these bike rides were changing me and all these things I was experimenting with, like not drinking anymore, like not doing all these things, made that show not fit my lifestyle anymore. Along the way, Zach and I had gotten to know each other because our wives were pregnant at the same time. They joined a Fit Mom group where the goal was, after a few weeks of giving birth, that they were going to participate in a triathlon, which is just a Herculean miracle. I mean, they're just beasts. So in the course of their trainings, of course, the brunches start getting scheduled, the hangouts start getting scheduled. Zach and I are both big Star Wars fans, so we're finding ways to bond over these different things and doing the thing guys do, where it's like, oh, did you watch the big sports ball game last week? How was that thing? And the more we got to know each other, the more that we started to find ways to open up about the struggles of being new dads, the struggles of being husbands, the struggles of trying to, get the job done and be home on time and do all of the things. And as my first podcast wrapped up, Zach came to me and he said, with that thing being over, what if we took these really open, vulnerable conversations that we're having and turned that into a podcast? Because we don't hear guys talk like this. We still rarely hear guys talk like this. And I thought, well, that's completely nuts. There's no way I'm doing that. I'm no expert. I'm no guru. I'm not going to be able to help people. My job was always to try to make people laugh. But the more that we sort of looked into the genre and talked about sort of the format, we realized, just by sharing our own experience, we can be we don't have to be the guy on top of the mountain. We can be the guy around the corner that's saying, hey, come this way. And when we get lost, we can bring in people to help fill those knowledge gaps and bring in the data, bring in the science, the things that we maybe don't understand as well, and share it that way. And so ultimately he twisted my arm enough to give it a shot. And the amazing part about it has been not only our ability to help so many people and to make this journey so much less lonely for so many people trying to sort it out, but just personally, like the accountability tool that it is, just knowing that every week I've got to show up and share something about my life that, a struggle that I'm facing, an obstacle I'm trying to overcome. It forces me to focus on it and find ways through it so that I can help others rather than falling into old patterns and sort of just becoming a victim and just telling myself I can't do it. That's for other people. That's for successful people. Knowing that I, have sort of put myself in this somewhat of a leadership position helps keep me accountable for my goals and the things that I say I'm going to do.
Zach, I want to ask you now that, from this standpoint, and, Jeremy, you can kick in too. Why is it that guys typically don't talk about these things? Because it is universal. I mean, I look in our health coaching business, far more times does the wife jump onto a health journey before, and then brings the husband, kicking and screaming. But yet at the same time, the benefit is when the guy has a life transformation, they become the loud advocate from it. So it's like this whole reserve thing, but then they explode into the thing. Why do you think that is?
Well, I would tell you, but my childhood programming says I shouldn't. I'm kidding. Just kidding. No, I think, but that's it right there. Like, I mean, the way I grew up, I know the way Jeremy grew up, that was the message that I got as a kid, that men don't show emotions. If you hurt yourself, like get up, rub some dirt on it, move on, you're okay. Oh, you need to talk about that? No, 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 no. You just swallow that and move on. And that, I mean, that's how we were all raised, right? I mean, not all of us, the majority of us were raised that way. And for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? It's been that way. And I think even just in the last 5 to 10 years, we're really starting to see that shift a little bit. But for me, I know it was, I was on like a health journey for a long time and getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. But then in 2015, I had a career change that made me realize that my whole persona was my job, and my persona shattered overnight. And, taking this new job. So I still had a job. I still had money. I was still, providing for my family. But I realized in this one moment, I was like, I don't know who I am anymore. And I dove in even deeper. And that was actually, it was shortly after that where I was talking to Jeremy. I was like, we need to do a podcast. So I did go from, the guy who was like, you don't talk about your feelings, you don't do those things, to, big advocate for it. But it's scary, right? I mean, these childhood beliefs, these things that are, put into our brain as children, they're really hard to question. And, we're talking about mindset here. It is a mindset to question your own beliefs. It's a mindset to be able to say, why do I believe that? What is this thing that I believe? And I think that's the only way we're going to get out of this, is to be able to look back and say, okay, I was raised this way. Is that right? Maybe, maybe not. But if it's not, what's another way to look at it? Jeremy's probably got his own perspective on it, but I really think it's just how we were raised, and it's just been this way for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I hate this phrase at work, but when you ask somebody why they're doing something, like, oh, we do it this way because we've always done it this way. And it
Mhm.
takes a little bit of radical thinking to make the change. But man, for anyone who's listening, maybe who is like, oh no, I can't explore my emotions. Yeah, it's painful. Yeah, it's rough to get through it. But once you get to the other side, it's like it's a new light. You're a new person, and the world shines differently. So
It still comes with its struggles, though, and I want to talk about that radical thinking that you just mentioned, because here we are, I believe, advocates for guys being vulnerable, sharing their feelings, experiencing the full range of emotions that all human beings feel, but for some reason we're not allowed to show some of ours. And yet, recently, I was with a friend. I have daughters, so raising daughters is one thing, raising sons is another. It's an experience I don't have. Friends of mine have sons. I've been around them recently, and it was an interesting experience because there were times when I saw their sons being emotional or crying when they were hurt, and these things would happen. Happens to every kid, like nothing out of the ordinary, nothing strange about it. But part of me, part of that like man thing, like that thing that we're programmed to be, saw that and went, "What's wrong with him? Why can't he just get through that?" And I had to be like super aware of like, oh my God, where did that horrible thing come from? So there is just something in my programming and my wiring or whatever that still, despite everything that I do to try and stop that sort of behavior or that thinking, to see it and to myself go, oh, what's wrong with that kid? Why doesn't he rub some dirt on it? I was offended by myself, and I just thought, man, how do I still have that voice in my head after all the work I've done? So I mean, I think that just speaks to how deeply this is a part of the male experience, I guess, for lack of a better word. But that was a very eye-opening experience for me.
Well, and I think that kind of translates into one of the things, Jeremy, that you brought up, that early on in our discussion today, and that is, not only are you working on the physical you, but you go to therapy continually to develop, getting rid of the things that don't serve you from your past and being able to be fully present, in the now, because really that's all we have. The past is concrete, the future's a vapor. All we have is the now that we can work with. What kind of journey was that to shift you from holding on? Obviously, again, old man creeps up and tries to yank us back every so often. But what are some of the things? And again, forgive me, I'm doing a dual interview here. But even you, Zach, what are some of? I mean, you can't put a timeline on it, but like, how did you see progress happen? What were some of the
Mhm.
milestones that you reached through the process as you continue to go through the process that let you know you were on the right path?
Well, I mean, possibly going in reverse chronological order here. One of the most recent developments that I've had in my journey through this is I have been horrible to myself my entire life. Just the voice of "you're worthless, you suck, you're not good enough, success is for other people, you'll never be, you can't do that," all these things. And that voice is gone. I mean, gone in a way that it's noticeably absent. And it tries to creep up every now and then, but I'm so aware of the lack of power it actually has that I don't even really hear it anymore. The last time was I live in British Columbia. I drove down to Seattle for a weekend event, and I got to my mom's house where I was staying, and I went to brush my teeth, and I didn't have my toothbrush in my kit. And I started going like, "Ah, you idiot. How could you forget something so simple, like so basic as a toothbrush?" And in the middle of the thought, I went, well, you did work up until like the second you had to leave. You had to go to school to pick up your kid on the way. You had to fight 3 hours of traffic. You were a little busy. So maybe this is just like a human thing. And maybe if you stop whining about it and open the drawer, you'll find a spare toothbrush in your mom's drawer. Open the drawer, and of course, there's a toothbrush there. And I just thought, man, like that in the past would have been the first of many horrible things I would have said to myself and beaten myself up all weekend. What a dope I am. I can't believe how done. And that I just would have continued to look for evidence that I am that dope that completely screwed up something so basic. But for the first time, I caught myself in the middle of that thought and went, no, that's not real. It's not true. That's just old wiring that still like fritzes out every once in a while.
Hmm.
And I don't think I've had that since. Like I've jokingly said it to my friends, like, "Oh, I'm such a dummy. I can't figure out how to open this gate," or whatever. But that same malicious voice of like, "You just suck," it's gone. I don't know where it lives now, but it doesn't live in my head anymore.
And I'll turn it over to you, Zach. What is an area where you saw, ah, here it is. Now I'm making progress. What was that aha moment for you?
Yeah, so I will freely admit that I've, of all the manly qualities that, we all love and appreciate, very quick to anger when frustrated was definitely one that oh man, I perfected that one. Just, things would just, if I got to a frustration point, like I would just have a moment where like there'd be, I'd hit a wall or just, lash out at whoever I'm talking to and just have that moment of anger. Um, and as I've been working on all of these things, again, it's all about the mindset and how you're talking to yourself and being able to recognize when you're having these thoughts. Um, I remember specifically this one day where something was going on with the TV. My daughter was trying to watch something and she was like, "Dad, why isn't the TV working? Why?" Like screaming, like, "Why is the TV?" Like it was just loud and the TV wasn't working. And then my wife was calling me from upstairs at the time, asking me if I had done that super important thing that she wanted me to do. And like all the environment was there, right? For me to snap. And I remember like seeing the red, like seeing the moment about to come where like the remote was going to go across the room and then I was going to have to go buy a new remote. Um, and something just happened where like the red went away and I was like, and it just stopped. There was no like active thought process in the middle of it. It just stopped. And I was like, all of these things will happen. You'll get them all done. And I got tingles throughout my whole body at that moment because I would have normally flipped out. And like fast forward to today, like where whenever I get to that moment now, like I see it, I feel it, I can take deep breaths, I can control that outburst, and be very mindful of it. I get into the moment, I close my eyes. Like my daughter sees it now. She's like, "Oh, you were just about to flip out, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yep." So just give me a second, please. I need 1 second and I can bring myself down. But that took years of little changes, little practice. Like, everyone talks about mindfulness and meditation and how just start doing it and you'll be good, right?
Hmm.
No, it takes a long, long time to get there. So,
Um, Now, I want to kind of turn the conversation in the time that we have remaining to the podcast that y'all started because, again, it's no small feat, and you know, one of the things that I have noticed in my podcast journey too is that you glean a lot from the people that you interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just so much value that's brought. And I love what y'all said about you're not doing it from a place of we have arrived and now we're showing you the way. You're saying we're on the journey together. Let's travel together and see what we can learn. So as I bring that up, what is one guest or maybe one guest story that really impacted you from the podcast that you did? You ask somebody a question and they just reveal. For me, I'm in the leadership space, so if I were to have like John Maxwell on, I'd be taking notes more than asking questions, right? So what were some of your key podcast moments that really spoke to you on your journey? And I'll start with Zach this time.
all right. So I don't remember the episode number, but we spoke with a gentleman named Chris Duffin, and I think he's got the Guinness World Record for the most amount of weight, either I think deadlifted and back squatted. So he did, if a back squat, you put a barbell on your shoulders and then squat. He did it with 1,000 pounds on the bar. Um, just absolutely crazy. So like I saw that and was like, I want to talk to this guy. Um, and I really resonated with him because my childhood, I had a pretty traumatic childhood. His was 10 times worse than mine, 10 times worse. And, you get him on, he's like, oh, I started this business, I do this. Like, he's so successful. He's so good. Like, he's very mindful. He's got all the things in order. Like, and he does struggle, but I loved that one because I don't run into a lot of people who had it worse than me. And I know there are a lot of them. I just don't happen to run into them. This guy did. And I remember in the middle of the interview just going, wow, what can I do? Like, I didn't have it nearly as bad as this guy, and he's more successful than me. Wow, this guy's the limit for me. So I love those interviews where it really puts perspective on me, on what I can do, what I can't do, what I'm capable of. And then the other one I really loved was Sean T, because like he was like a personal hero to me, and like his home workouts were another step for me. I was like kind of healthy, and then I started doing Insanity, and it like took it to a whole new level and like brought me to I need to work out to feel good, and it really built that foundation for my mental health. So I'll never forget the day Jeremy was like, what are you doing on Thursday? I was like, I don't know why. And he's like, we're talking to Sean T. Like, that was an amazing interview.
All right, off to you, Jeremy. What are your most memorable or the impactful guests you've had on your show?
Yeah, so many. I mean, we're so fortunate. Whenever we get asked this question, just the list of the people, the caliber of the people we've talked to, I'm just like, how have we pulled this off? This is insane. I will go with my biggest hero in terms of writing, Ryan Holiday. His writing has changed my life in ways that I could never have imagined. So getting to talk to him was the thrill of a lifetime. And I don't honestly, I don't remember if it was the conversation we had with him or if it was just through his work, but I mean, literally the title of his book, The Obstacle is the Way, and sort of breaking down that concept of, we want to live easy. We don't want to have challenges. We don't want to have things that are difficult in our life, but it turns out that those are the path. Those are the path to growth, to just finding your way through those things. There's no way around them. You have to go through them. And through talking with him and just following his work has completely changed the way that I approach every aspect of my life. So that is incredibly powerful. And then, as long as we're on the Beachbody kick with Sean T, talking to Tony Horton, the creator of the P90X workout program, it was one of those things where how many times have you had a guest on here is like, you got to know what your why is, right? Like that comes up all the time. But for whatever reason, when I asked him, how come I hate going to the gym? And he goes, dude, because your why sucks. And I was like, yeah, you're right, Tony. I've never heard that before. Like, for whatever reason, it just, the way he said it, I was like, I needed to hear it this way from you right now for that to matter to me in a way that changed my life. So those are the two that come to mind immediately. So the Chris Duffin one that Zach mentioned, that's episode 98 in our catalog, and Ryan Holiday, episode 104, if you're sifting through the playlist.
So, and let's go ahead and let folks know, how can folks follow you, get in touch with you? The podcast, I know the podcast's on every platform because all podcasts or have every platform, but go ahead and give us the breakdown of how people can reach and follow you guys.
Yeah. However you're listening to or watching this right now, we are likely on this platform. So YouTube, Apple, all of the places. The fastest and easiest path to all of them is thefitmess.com. That's where all of the links to all of the various players and subscriptions and all of the things, you can find them at thefitmess.com.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you once again for being on the show today. It's been amazing, and looking forward to what the future holds for you guys, for the future of the podcast, and the lives that are being impacted. Because I say this all the time, and I'm going to say it this last time again. It's not knowledge that is power. It's applied knowledge that is power. Thank you guys for being on, and everybody, God bless.